Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Digital Identity 360. We are super delighted to have Alisdair with us again. Alisdair, as you know, is our Chief Identity Officer, one of the founders here at ThreatMetrix and now LexisNexis Risk Solutions. And he has a mandate to cover the entire identity purview across the company. And today, Alisdair is just chopping it up a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of holiday trends and stuff coming out of our network. So welcome, good to have you.
Thanks, Frank.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
So, go ahead.
No, as you said, another huge holiday peak holiday season. We saw huge transaction growth, just part of the wave of moving from offline, online, just the convenience. Perhaps one of the things that was a little interesting is people getting ahead of the rush, ordering. But certainly we saw peaks up, 20% higher than our transaction volumes last year. So it's just showing people just more and more that wave going from physical to digital.
It's interesting. If you look at between Friday, the Black Friday, Cyber Monday phenomenon, I saw many of our customers in 50% plus transaction growth. And one of the things that was really interesting, and you mentioned it a little bit routinely, but we've seen it this weekend, is this idea of how mobile transactions have gone up. I think we're almost peaking or eclipsing 60% in mobile traffic.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about some of the risks associated with the mobile side.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, it's double-edged sword. You've got the convenience, so around 62% actually with a percentage of mobile transaction up from about 52% last year. And, some of the risks, obviously, is it's people can impersonate you, they can, people are getting used to transacting, being on the move, and that can make some e-merchants flat-footed when it comes to real-time processes. Not used to people traveling around countries that would often flag fraud flags, being in a jurisdiction or a country, but a state that you don't normally live in. So, that's kind of fraught for these e-commerce folks. But on the other hand, it's just provided this tremendous opportunity. I mean, who wasn't at the table at Thanksgiving, doing a little bit of shopping on the side?
20-30% off, click now.
Exactly.
It's interesting. We did a podcast last week with Brett Johnson, who spoke at our summit, and talked about the idea that so much of fraud is social engineering. So check this out. My own wife got a phone call from a number that looked like my number. My number had been spoofed, saying, hey, Frank's in trouble. Please provide, some money to get him out of trouble. So it's interesting how people engineer names and phone numbers and how that phenomenon is becoming a real mobile thing.
Yeah.
And you think of the potential threat there, because you've got payment methodologies and wallets right on your phone. I can send money with one click if I fall for that kind of thing. So
I think that's a really good point, that mobile encompasses a lot of things, and fraudsters are targeting the mobile device or the telecommunications network. They realize that many banks and organizations still use one-time passwords, and they're looking to facilitate moving or porting your phone number to intercept that authentication method. But then other more scary, I think, and more personal issues is where they're impersonating. Yeah. So you don't know whether a phone number is coming from a genuine person or not, and often people panic. And same thing happened actually to someone I know just today who had someone calling saying their social security number was about to be cancelled unless they confirmed. And then what they were effectively doing was trying to fish social security numbers information, which could be used then against them. So, and this is important for the theme of holiday shopping, is that it's not just e-commerce transactions. Now there's a lot of initiatives around gift cards. People are buying for Christmas, and thieves are using these social engineering and using the phone and the telco network as the weak point to be able to extract this data for use later on.
And it is a weak point because everything you need is right on that device, right? I've got everything. I can make a payment. I can do whatever right from the device. Interesting point, though, that's I think manifested more in the holiday season than other times. When we look at what's in a cart, a typical cart transaction is $100. Below $100, nobody seems to worry. But we're starting to see, I think, this year, cybercrime, when you're $250 and above, it's probably a fraudulent transaction.
Yeah, I mean, what we see is, and it's about, we've been tracking through the years, but it's approximately about $100 is the average basket value, which is a pretty reasonable statistic that you see over the years. And about $300, or the average fraudulent transactions, between 2.7 and 3 times the average regular order. So what becomes really difficult for merchants is that obviously this is peak season, that the most valuable customers are also the ones that are most likely to be fraud, i.e. those with large basket values. So what that's doing is forcing a premium on those organizations who can have real-time fraud detection that can leverage things like a digital identity network to understand, for example, that device and that associated identity has a regular transaction pattern, that this is actually someone who's trying to order, some Christmas goods while eating some turkey.
That's right.
Versus a fraudster that's trying to
that you're not
off.
really impinging on your premium customers who happen to have a basket order that's much larger than $250. And so it's interesting that constant tension between friction and prevention, right? What do I do and where does it live? Another thing that's interesting, and just today, by the way, dealing with this with a couple of our customers in the network, is the incessant bot attacks that seem to happen in Q4, but certainly the last 3 or 4 days have been just remarkable in the shopping season. Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, just the stuffing, the credential stuffing, the weakness that's being exploited by these bots.
Yeah, so I've used this term weaponization of identity, and that it's happening thick and fast, a tsunami of credential testing where folks are. So there's 2 types of attacks. One is where they're using stolen credit cards to buy goods online during this heavy peak season. But the other profitable attack is to go after your wallet. Yeah. So you might have a mobile wallet, but you might not realize that you also have a website that you can also access that same mobile wallet on that website, and that's what fraudsters are going for. What's the best possible fraudulent thing that you could do? Well, have a valid account, get access to it because you're using a shared password with your email account. It's a valid credit card. It's got good history. So, the fraud checks are going to be a lot harder. So there's a lot of nuance in fraud detection has moved from just, is this device valid and is the location valid and have we seen it before, but is the behavior down to an individual account user level consistent? Because unlike a bank, merchants can't just enforce 2-factor authentication. It just doesn't happen. So the reality of any and every organization, whether you're an e-commerce merchant, whether you're a SaaS service provider, if you're using an email as your username, is that without per user behavioral analytics extended across not only the behavioral transactions that you see for your site that is a regular transaction
you're
pattern,
in trouble.
You need to have a global perspective. And that's where we're able to see things like bot attacks hit one of our customers, then pretty soon they move on. And it's also this thing, what they're really trying to get at is by just overwhelm your defenses. And that's why during the holiday season on the transactional side, it's just such a peak fraud season because they know that fraud, merchants are hesitant to say no during the period of time when, for many of them, 80% of
the
their
whole
profit,
year is Q4. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. So bot attacks is a near present danger, and it's here.
And it's interesting that as part of weaponizing these tools, the sophistication of these people is remarkable. As you said, I've got a device with a wallet on it. I'm doing all my transacting with it, but I don't realize the point of vulnerability is another website that's sharing that same wallet as a legitimate deal. So they're smart enough to exploit the weakness, right? The point that's not hardened, the point that's easier to get to. So it's a fascinating time. Here's the beauty of something you just mentioned about what we see when we get on the network. I love this idea when you look at the threat metrics customers and they first deploy the system and they have a local view of Frank. And then immediately when we turn on the global view, and as you said, they're able to say, wow, this is amazing. I can now see Frank and all of his permutations across the internet, all of his behavior in real time across that same journey. And without that, you're so vulnerable. You begin to realize just optically the power of a digital identity network because you've got this global perspective of me that they don't have at the local level. So very salient point on how we use those tools to kind of mitigate thing. In a real sense, Alisdair, you are how you behave on the internet. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, just to clarify the point on that is, obviously it's anonymous data. It's looking for fraud signals and others that we can surface from the network. But more often than not, actually, what we find is that the digital identity network is even more valuable for identifying good customers because, fraudsters burn devices, they get burner phones, they, use virtual machines, and so they're always vaporizing as soon as you find them. But what's left after that is, this huge population of regular, everyday users who are just transacting as normal, anonymously on the internet, and that's the power of the network.
With established relationships, and as you said, the key here and the secret sauce for us is that I do it anonymously. So I'm not, running a muck of any privacy laws or things like that. So predictions for the holiday season.
Wow, it's exactly what we've seen. Transaction growth is just increasing. Mobile becomes, by far the dominant platform. automated attacks are increasing, and increasing in sophistication. It's multiple state actors.
Yeah.
We've seen even just past back, there was a bust of a major ad fraud.
That's right.
Utilizing automation techniques.
Yeah.
But what I'm proud about the work that happens at LexisNexis and Threat Metrics is that we're not just ripping off budget and ad networks. We're actually protecting people without them knowing that their identities are being used and abused on a daily basis. And that helps you get up in the morning knowing that you're doing a great thing.
Yeah, it provides some meaning to what we're doing because it's a real person who's benefiting from the fact that we're protecting them across their journey.
Right.
And that is profoundly cool. So, Alisdair, thanks. Always great to chop it up.
Likewise.
And, good to have you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.